What is up, Lions Den? I am really excited to be here because this is something I am genuinely excited to talk about and to just overall, I love talking about this. I love talking about who we are and what makes us happy because for a really long time, I had no idea. I had no idea what made me happy. I had no idea what brought me joy. And so when I heard from Sean talking about how success leaves patterns, well, so does happiness, so does understanding ourselves. And I am going to, normally I did a little different today. I normally do a mini hypnosis session when I do my trainings, but I really, once I heard Sean talking about who are we and answering these questions, and I just saw so many people who genuinely didn't know how to answer that, didn't know what their purpose and what made them happy. I thought, okay, we're going to switch gears just a little bit, and we'll go back to the hypnosis sessions next week. But all of this will tie together because I'm going to show you exactly why we use those sessions, why how we got into it, and it's going to tie all together. But for those just listening, this will be one of those things where if you can view it, if you need to come back to view it, it'll be a little bit more helpful just because it's going to be a lot of information. So so I'm going to go through the information, and then for those joining us, if you have any questions, I'll open up to Q&A. But the first thing is really what I figured out for myself is basically it's self-awareness. It's understanding, going internally into and just becoming very, very self-aware. Now, what we talk a lot about in the den is the core four, which I love, and it's amazing. And a lot of people focus on, their physical, they focus on power, they focus on relationships, passion, and the money. And that's a really great way to see whether or not internally things are working for us. What I'm actually going to talk about is up here, which is purpose. I personally found that if you break those into three, if you break them into spiritual, mental, and emotional, you actually can now find a system. You find those clues, you find those patterns that help us figure out who we are. And this right here, the mental, the spiritual, the emotional, when you can figure these out, all of the relationship, the body issues, the production, the physical, everything works out very, very nicely. Okay, so we're going to start with spiritual. Spiritual is your purpose, your passion. It is why you are here in this life. It is what gets you out of bed. It is why you are so excited to get out of bed. It is, I mean, we've all heard this. It's kind of a buzzword, like, what's your purpose? What's your passion? The thing that's kind of interesting, though, is you have multiple purposes and you have ones that are seasonal. So a lot of times, which I don't want to get, I want to kind of just be very basic on explaining these, and then we'll come back to it and I'll show you how this all fits together. The next one is mental, which these are your rules. Your rules are who you are as a person. It's how you send information in this world, how you receive information, how you handle things, how you handle situations, what you need. It's super easy to understand. Like, I know sometimes it's fun to take little personality tests, and it's like, oh, you're this color and I'm this color, and you're like, okay. But the reality is, this is how we interact with each other. This is how if you know your rules, you'll be able to understand your needs, which will understand your standards, which will then create your boundaries. So this is really important to understand who you are, especially in relationships, and especially to understand, to make sure you're getting your needs. And then also if you're working with other people, if you understand your needs and you can easily recognize another person's like personality or their energy type or what a specific need that they have, you're going to do way more business. You're going to handle situations so much better because you'll have those skills, you'll have those tools under your belt. So I'm just going to go with them. So down real quick. Okay, so you have personality. I personally love energy types. This is by Carol Tuttle. She breaks it up into 4. Some people do colors. You can do Enneagrams. You can do human design. There's other ones. There is a million personality tests. But basically, it is understanding who you are as a person. Why this is so important is, for instance, when I get when I am handling like a lot of emotion, like a really sad situation, if someone has passed away, I like to handle that very privately, very, very, very personally. I grew up in a family that there was a lot of crying, there was a lot of expression of emotion. And to be honest, that's just very uncomfortable for me. And I always thought there was something wrong with me. I always thought, oh, I should cry. The rest of my family's crying. I should cry. But it just didn't feel right for me. And then when I learned about energy types, it was really interesting. And it was great for me to know there's nothing wrong with me. That's just how I process emotion. And that's okay. Other people process it by talking it out. Other people process it by crying it out with other people. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no right, there's no wrong. It's just, how do you do it? And this is why it's so important, because if you are a person who, like me, doesn't really like to express emotion, but let's say you have a partner who really expresses emotion, they're going to think that you're shunning them because you don't want to express emotion in front of them. But then if you understand, and you both understand that this is just who you are, it's okay. It's okay. And you can work through that. Okay. The next part of it we've talked a lot about is love languages. This is another rule. And I just want to make sure these are things that we need. These are not things that we would like. They're things that we need. It's like, receiving love, sending love. I love this. I'm going to give Tony Robbins credit, but I think this is pretty well known in the self-help world, but I learned it from him. So we all have 4 needs. There's actually 6 of them, but the 4 we're going to talk about today. And that is variety, consistency, love and connection, and significance. Now, these are absolutely dire, but what's interesting is you would pick your top 1 or 2. And this is insanely important because this is truly stuff that it's really like life or death. This comes like right after shelter, water, then comes these specific needs. There's also intimacy types. There's logistical, intellectual, recreational, financial, sexual, spiritual. So as you can see in the rules, there's so many rules. There's so many things. And I didn't want to get a ton into it. There's leadership rules. There's how you lead people, how you work with other people. I didn't want to get a ton of these because there's so many. I mean, you can find everybody who's systematized and come up with systems for this. But the point is at least start somewhere. Start somewhere in your rules. Like if you have no idea what your personality is or your partner's personality, then start there. If you don't know your love language or your partner's love language, or even your children or people that you care about, start there. There's really no wrong way or right way to start. It's just, these are really important rules because they're what you need. All right, the next one that we're going to talk about, this is emotional. Now we have been talking, this is what Sean was talking about on Wednesday's call. These are the stories, AKA the lies that we tell ourselves. The interesting thing is it can be broken down into 3 very specific lies that I don't care where you live on the planet. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care who you are. We all deal with the same 3 lies, and they boil down to this. I am not enough. I am different, so I can't connect. It's not available to me. I don't care what you're dealing with. I don't care what it comes down to. These are the three things that it always comes back to. Okay, so now I know that was kind of a lot of information, but what I'm going to do is now I want to kind of put it all together. So how do these lies, these stories, how do they kind of intertwine with everything that, like between the rules and your purpose? Okay, so the stories and lies, how it affects your purpose is because it comes in basically three ways. Either one, you just haven't tried enough things. If you don't know what your purpose and your passion is, either you just haven't tried enough things. That is very rare. It's very rare to get to a certain age and just not have tried enough stuff, but it is possible. But the other two are probably the more likely ones. Number one, you do have an idea, or this is number two, you do have an idea of what it is that you love to do. It was just shamed. Like, that's ridiculous. Who would want to do that? Only, horrible people do that. That's stupid. And the other one is, well, other people can do it, but you can't. We don't do that. No, we don't have anybody in our family that goes to college. So you see, as you can take these dreams that as a kid, you're like, oh, I'd love to do that. I'd love to XYZ. And then you put these stories in that at some point, some way, somehow, somebody was either shamed about it, like that's ridiculous. And as a kid, we don't really know how to process that because as children, we believe kind of everything that our parents tell us. That's a whole other topic that we could get into. But it's basically what it comes down to is kids, we believe what our parents say. And as you get older, you kind of grow out of it at a certain point. But if you believe something as a little kid, you think it's law. And so if your parents say something is stupid or something that you can't do, we believe it. And that's kind of how we're wired. So that's how stories in life get started, typically is when we're in childhood. The next one, stories and lies get into our rules, is because let's say you understand that you come to understand that you're a high energy person. Okay, it's very easy and very probable that you were shamed, that you were too much. Oh, you're too much. On the flip side, maybe you were a quiet kid. Oh, you're too quiet. So now, as a kid, who you are to the core, you're this kid who just really is expressive, or you're a kid who really, doesn't really want to be out really that loud. Either way, now you've been told it's wrong. You to a core, you who you are as a person, now it's wrong. Other things like maybe your love language is acts of service and there was really nobody there. So now you've created this belief that no matter if I'm going to do anything, I have to do it by myself. I'm the only one I can trust because nobody else is going to be there for me. Another one that's really fascinating to me is the majority of us are following other people's rules rather than our own. Not only do we not know our rules, we're literally following other people's rules. I think it's really funny when you go to some people's houses, or I'll have friends, and even I did this at a time where there was a right way to load the dishwasher. That's a rule. There's a right way to load the dishwasher, which is there? Like, is there a right way? But we have these stories, we have these beliefs in our head that there's a right way to do something and it has to look this way. It has to look a very, very specific way. Maybe you were told you were annoying because you were high energy. Maybe you were told that you should be more outgoing because you were, a quieter kid. But these are all the different ways that our rules were shamed, were guilted. You need to be to something. And basically it comes down to, as a kid, as you were growing up, you just weren't enough. You weren't loud enough. You weren't quiet enough. Maybe you weren't smart enough. Maybe you were compared to somebody else, like a brother or sister. They were really smart. They were this, they were that. And we take those stories on and they become a belief. They become a hardcore belief in our systems, in our belief systems. Okay, so the stories and lies in the core core 4 is when it comes to power. This one's really fascinating to me because a lot of times our physical pain come from a belief system. So I'll give you a story. So when I was little, I had horrible stomach aches, and they couldn't really figure out what it was. This went on for a couple of years, and finally they diagnosed me with stomach migraines. I had a little tiny headache when they would come on, but not a tiny headache. I would have a pretty bad headache, but it wasn't full-blown migraine, but I would have a migraine in my stomach. And I, quote unquote, grew out of it. So I went for a really long time and I didn't have them again. Well, a few years ago, I all of a sudden started getting these migraines back again, these stomach migraines. And it was really interesting because I was kind of in the middle, it was right when I was in the middle of learning all this, and I understood that a big majority of physical pain physical symptoms are a result of emotional things. And so I started deep diving into what it was that was causing this. And so basically, physical pain comes down to 3 things. It's protecting us, it's punishing us, or it's getting us a need. And what I learned is when I was a little kid, there was a crazy amount of chaos in my family. But if I got a migraine, if I got sick, I got my own special room, I got the TV to myself, I got snacks brought to me, and I got quiet time, I got alone time, I got to be by myself. I got consistency. And the interesting thing is these migraines came back in a very chaotic time of my life. We were moving, we were renovating a house, we were doing all this stuff, and I just kept getting these migraines. And what I figured out is I was not letting myself rest. And so my body knew that if I got sick, if I got a migraine, I would go in the room and I would allow myself to rest. And when I finally realized this, and I could take the steps that I'd learned to remove it, to let it go, I don't get them anymore because I found a healthier way and I allow myself to rest now. I tell myself I can rest. I can find a healthier way to get consistency. I can find a healthier way. I don't need this anymore. Another way, like we have weird stories, we had beliefs around diet. Oh, I have to XYZ. I can never lose weight. I look at a cupcake and I gain weight. I look at food, I just cannot have bread. Addiction's another one that's kind of interesting. That always comes back to I'm not enough. And then we have beliefs about exercise. Oh, I just could never lift a certain amount of weight. And these are all lies that we tell ourselves. The next one for the lies is in passion. I find this really interesting that how many stories we have around relationships of what is available and what is not available. I've met so many people when I talk to clients and they want a good relationship, but they're like, oh, my husband would never. Oh, my wife would never. And I think, have you talked to them? And they're like, no, because they would never. They've already believed it in their head. They already know the answer in their head. And so there's no point. They're just going to give up and it's hopeless, and nothing's ever going to change. Jealousy comes up in relationships, and that's I'm not enough. I'll never be enough. And it makes people mad. Jealousy is really something, it's a belief system that you see something that you want, but you don't think you're ever going to get it. Jealousy is really fascinating because it's truly something you want, but you're jealous because you don't think you're going to get it. And so now you're mad. When the reality is, it's probably available to you. Most likely, 99.999% of the time, it's available to you. You just have created a story. You've created a belief that it's not. And then again, it comes back to childhood issues of I can't connect. One of the things that comes up a lot is, my father left. If I can't even get my own dad to love me, how would I be able to get somebody else to love me? I'm not good enough. My father left me, so I'm never, ever going to be able to connect with people. Okay, so stories and lies in production. This one is money is a great way to see if you have stories. Great way. It's one of the first things that will always pop up. If you have beliefs around money, money is the root of all evil, only scam artists or con artists get rich. Money, maybe some of you have heard money doesn't grow on trees. It's hard to make money. I'm not a good enough seller. I'm not good enough this. So, well, of course, that person could make money, but I could never. Like, there's so many stories, there's so many lies around it, around making money, selling products, being successful, having wealth, really just having a good life. There's so many stories and lies. Okay, so one of the ways that we combat this, is actually what I do, which is hypnotherapy. And every week, for the last, I think two, maybe 3 weeks, but I come on here and I do mini sessions all about these lies and these stories. Now, they're mini sessions. They're not a full personal session, which is what normally I would do. But if you guys want to go back and take a look at those, you absolutely can. The first one I think I did was I'm not enough, which is what everybody deals with. But there's other ways that you can interrupt these stories. Meditation works, energy healing works, even therapy, talk therapy has helped people before. But the point is to start recognizing where to start and what stories you're believing, just like Sean said on yesterday. So I know this is so much information, and sometimes it feels like I just turned a fire hose 2 inches from your face, but here's where to start for this. So you can start on any one of these 3 things, but just start at least on one. If it's super easy that you know generally what your rules are, that's great. Start there. Start looking at what your partner's rules are. Start looking at what your kids' rules are. Things you could start there. If you don't know your purpose, start there. Start looking at what stories are behind that. Yesterday I put out, right after Sean's weekly call, I put out I have a workbook that I've been working on. And so I put out just a mini version of that. It's on my profile. If any of you want to go and take a look at that, and their prompts, their questions to kind of help get started on all of this stuff that I was talking about. And then as far as the stories, one of the things that's been very, very helpful for me is when I realize a story, when I realize a lie that I've been telling myself, I'll write it down, because the majority of the time, the stories and the lies show up at really inconvenient times, like in the middle of you shopping or something. Like, I remember one time I was going to go to Lions Den Live, and I had done this work on myself a lot. So I had worked through a good majority of my stories, and and it was kind of funny because I went to go get travel size stuff. And as I went, I realized, I'm out of big hairspray, but I'm going to get a little hairspray. And I noticed as I reached to grab both of them, I felt really guilty. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Why do I feel this? Why do I feel this guilt? Why do I feel this shame that I'm buying both of them? And it came back to, I felt guilty that I was spending the money, that I was even going on this trip, that I was taking money away from whatever, which isn't true. It wasn't true. It was that was such a lie that I was telling myself. And it came down to, who do I think I am? I don't deserve this trip. And I had to remove that story, but it's really funny that it was a very inconvenient time. I was in the middle of shopping. And so what I like to do is I have on my phone or on a notepad, I have a let it go list. And so I wrote on my list in my phone, I was like, guilt for buying hairspray, guilt for going on this trip. And I had to take a few minutes when I had time and let that go and realize, no, I deserve this. I have worked hard for this. I deserve this. I am enough. I'm, everything's available to me. It's fine. And this is a good thing that I get to buy this mini hairspray. So you'll find that funny things like pop up like that. And out of the blue, you don't even know why. some of them are ridiculous, like hairspray, but they pop up. So that's where I would start, is wherever it feels comfortable. If you want to start a let it go list, maybe you've already had a flood of things that you need to let go of. Maybe you already know your rules but you want to add to that, or your purpose. Either one. There's no right or wrong way to start, but I definitely wanted to open it up. I have really enjoyed talking to you guys, but if you guys have any questions, or you guys can message me at any time, but if you guys had questions now, I would love to answer them, because I know sometimes it's a lot of information. But if at any time you guys have any questions or even want to talk about this more, message me. And yeah, I'm really grateful for all of you guys for joining me, and I'm truly excited to talk more about this. And I trust that this information was helpful, and I will talk to you guys later, and we'll see you later in the den.